Speaking of Europe, Israel is set to host the leaders of Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic in February for a conference intent on improving upon the already growing relations between the Jewish state and these so-called Visegrad nations. And in the wake of International Holocaust Memorial Day and the growing rates of anti-Semitism in Europe, Prime Minister Netanyahu is also expected to call on these four nations to help counter alleged anti-Israel biases in the international community. Joining me now with more is founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman. Dr. Sherman, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me back.
All right, so first of all, what do you expect to come out of asking the Visegrad countries to, help us more in the international community? Because haven't we already been doing that?
Well, I think, it's sort of a bit of choreography for Netanyahu. It's just another one in the long list of diplomatic successes he's had in the last few months, Africa, with Chad, Brazil.
So you mean ahead of elections, you mean?
And I think he's been careful to showcase them prior to the election, and, he does deserve credit for it. I understand there are going to be more high-profile visits in the future from Austria, Liberia. I think what's more important in the context of the meeting itself is the choreography rather than the substance. I think that it'll probably end with a declaration of cooperation, goodwill, etc., etc.
Okay, well, being that you just said, given the fact that you just said, it's probably more choreography and appearances than anything substantive. Let's still talk a little bit about the substance of this meeting, because does it make sense to necessarily ask these specific countries to, be coming to our aid and be our defense in the EU when historically, they all come from a pretty opposite background. Yeah. And Poland, for example, still has the Polish Holocaust law, which bans,
Well, there's a certain amount of irony to it, and you see Israel gravitating towards countries which have been perhaps more traditionally anti-Semitic and distancing itself, or being distanced from countries which traditionally have been more liberal, like France and countries like that. So there's a certain amount of irony to it, but
why do you think that
perhaps there's something beyond the anti-Semitism here, which is to try and drive a wedge within the EU against the almost wall-to-wall anti-Israel sentiment that there is in the more traditional EU countries, the older EU countries, on the issue of Palestine and Iran, because these Central European countries are more nationalistic, and in sort of the clash between nationalism and globalization. They tend, like Israel, to have a stronger nationalistic sentiment and a stronger anti-Muslim element in them, or at least opposing the large-scale Muslim immigration into Europe. So this driving a wedge into the EU unanimity may be one of the reasons behind the anti-Semitism, the anti-Semitism slogan.
All right. Well, we're gonna see next month, pretty soon. Then whether or not it really is substantive or not. And thank you so much for coming in, Dr. Sherman.
Thank you for having me.